If you've ever done any type of health test at Life Labs, you could be one of 15 million Canadians whose personal and private health information was hacked. Life Labs, Canada's largest lab testing service, made the attack public today. They say they were the victims of cyber ransom. Mike Wise joins us now with more on this developing story. And Mike, what kind of information was accessed here?
Well, Dwight, it's a full range of customer information. Life Labs is warning that could include names, addresses, emails, login passwords, date of birth, healthcare numbers as well as lab test results. Life Labs, as we said, is the largest provider of lab tests and diagnostic tests in Canada, and says this affects about 15 million people in Ontario and British Columbia. Now, it isn't saying how hackers got a hold of the information, but says it worked with experts on cyber attacks and paid the ransom to get that information back. It says it has fixed its security problems and is in the process of notifying those customers. So just how worried should you be about this data breach and your personal health information getting out there? Well, we spoke to an expert who says while many people may be genuinely concerned about their private health test results leaking out, that's actually not the part of this theft that you should worry about.
It's easier for criminals to commoditize things like your username, password, your home address as well. So that's probably where the initial concern is going to come in, is identity theft. The use of an individual's health information would be unlikely right now. They probably just use that to extort more money from Life Labs.
So she says be concerned about the personal information that got out there. It could be used in identity theft. She says you should let your bank know if you get a letter from Life Labs. It says its cybersecurity firms say the risk to customers is low, but it is offering all of its customers 1 year of free identity theft insurance and 1 year access to a service that looks out for stolen personal information on the so-called dark web. Dwight, that's think of that as the internet's underbelly, where criminals can buy and sell this kind of hacked personal information.
This is going to affect a lot of us. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Brace yourself for a bigger bill from the city next year. Today, at the last council meeting of 2019, councillors officially backed Mayor John Tory's tax hike. That means homeowners can expect a jump on their property tax payments starting in the new year and each year until 2025. City Hall reporter Lauren Pelly joins us now to break it all down. So, Lauren, we haven't seen a move like this in a long time.
Well, that's right. I mean, Mayor John Tory, he campaigned in 2 elections on low taxes, and this marks quite a big about-face for him now since he was elected back in 2014. What we're seeing is this special tax levy that'll be going up by 8% over the next 6 years. And city officials say it's necessary because the city needs billions for transit and housing, and that means you will be footing more of the bill.
The fact is that efficiencies alone cannot produce the amount of money that we need to fulfill our own obligations under the transit and housing agreements. That's just a fact.
And with that, Mayor John Tory made a final pitch to council, calling for a tax hike for a special city building levy in hopes of bringing more than $6 billion into city coffers. The move comes as city officials are planning to build more affordable housing over the next decade, all while maintaining and expanding the transit network to the tune of tens of billions.
It was a tough decision, but it was a decision that had to be made.
Councillors from all sides of the political spectrum backed the plan to raise taxes year over year for the first half of the next decade. In 2020, homeowners can expect to pay, on average, $43 more to the City Building Fund. And by 2025, a typical household will be contributing $280 more on top of their regular property taxes.
When this is fully rolled out, the City of Toronto will still have pretty much the lowest property taxes anywhere in the Greater Toronto Area, possibly even Ontario. So no, this is not an onerous ask.
Homeowners have mixed feelings.
I'm okay with it. Toronto's undertaxed as way it is for property tax compared to Oakville and places like that.
I'm not happy with it as a homeowner. I really don't want to see tax rates go up, but I guess it's part of doing business in the city.
Should we be continuing to try and raise transit off a property tax base? City should be looking for a different tax base, like income tax.
And today, the mayor did vow to find other revenue sources.
I will be relentless in making sure that the funding we have asked our residents to put forward will be matched by the provincial and federal governments.
Now, when you look at the numbers, that $6 billion plus the city would be bringing in from this, they still need billions and billions more to tackle their transit and housing plans. So as we enter this new decade, those conversations with higher levels of government will become increasingly important. Dwight?
Yes, they will, Lauren. So the mayor got his weighted and he got his tax hike. But what about the rest of the city budget?
Well, there's more to come. We can expect that garbage rates will be going up, but more of those budget discussions will be continuing into the new year. So we'll be reporting back then. Back to you.
Thank you, Lauren. Emotions running high at Queen's Park today as the government announced another delay for parents waiting for autism treatment for their children.
We're transitioning to a needs-based program, but it's important to us that families receive supports during this time. Panel and an extensive review of
the needs-based program the minister mentioned was originally promised to be up and running by April, but that's now been pushed back to 2021. In the audience during the minister's news conference were parents of children with autism, some holding pictures of their children and wiping away tears. They say the interim funding the government is promising isn't enough.
It's just giving us a little bit of money to go away and stay silent until 2021. He pretty much extended this whole thing for another whole extra year. We already been waiting for 18 months for our families, and we're in crisis. We're desperate for help from this government, and they're giving us nothing. This is garbage. This is a very sour Christmas for our families.
This government made a grave miscalculation. They think our children can be bought. They cannot be bought. $5,000 will not hold these children over.
We have over 8,000.
A planned revamp of autism funding announced earlier this year had to be scrapped by the provincial government after months of public protest. One day after the provincial government abruptly announced it's canceling funding for Hamilton's LRT project, Toronto's mayor says he doesn't believe the same thing will happen here. Talia Ritchie joins us live now from Pape Station. And Talia, some city councillors aren't as optimistic as our mayor.
Well, Dwight, the councillors I spoke with today are worried. They say transit projects often go over budget and that could easily happen with the Ontario line or the Scarborough subway extension. Meanwhile, politicians have been pressuring the province today to release that third-party report, which determined the Hamilton LRT would be billions more than they expected.
I would say it's a very sad day for Hamilton.
But councillors here say it's not a great day in Toronto either.
Can we expect that our transit plans, whether it be the Ontario line or other projects, are going to move forward?
Quite frankly, after yesterday's actions, I'm concerned about everything but the Ontario line.
Their stance, if it can happen there, it can happen here. Yesterday's decision from the province left a chaotic and confusing scene for residents in Hamilton, starting with the press conference that never was. Transportation Minister Caroline Mulroney says the original budget for the LRT was $1 billion. But after the PCs took over, a third party carried out a cost estimate and found the price tag would actually be $5.5 billion. NDP leader Andrea Horvath wants to know why.
The bottom line is Mr. Ford's making up the numbers to justify his cuts, so show us the numbers. Show us the report and give us an apples to apples comparison with the other projects that are ongoing right now in our province.
Councillors expressed concerns about the future of the Ontario line and the Scarborough subway today.
Of course, we're worried that they're going to do the same thing to us that they just did to Hamilton, and that's take operating costs and start calculating that in to demonstrate that a project is going over budget.
We've made commitments in the City of Toronto for our expansion plan, and we'll be moving forward with those, as I said.
John Tory doesn't share his councillors' concerns.
Well, I think they've already made a very significant commitment to Toronto, and it's in an agreement that we've reached with that government, and I'm optimistic we're going to go forward and get that transit built.
Now, yesterday, Mulroney said the province is still committing $1 billion to the city of Hamilton for transit, and they're also going to be putting together a task force to study transportation priorities in that city. I also reached out to the city of Mississauga today to see if there was any concerns on the future of the Hurontario LRT, which will run along Hurontario Street through Mississauga and Brampton, and their mayor said that project is still moving forward, full steam ahead. Dwight?
Thank you, Talia. Ontario unions and associations have announced their joint challenge to Bill 124. The bill places a cap on increases to public sector wages. The unions say they're hoping to repeal the legislation as it undermines the collective bargaining rights of all workers.
For a conservative government that prides itself on less regulation or government getting out of the way, this law is the absolute opposite. It is a direct intrusion into the rights of both employers and unions in the public sector to negotiate binding contracts.
The cap would affect people working in various streams, from education to healthcare. QP and the Ontario Federation of Labour are among the unions in the challenge. The group hopes that today's announcement will get other unions to join their fight. Treasury Board President Peter Bethenfalvey defended the bill just last week, saying it still allows employees to get raises for seniority, performance, or increased qualifications. And a reminder, high school teachers in 10 school boards will go ahead with a one-day strike tomorrow. As we told you yesterday, talks between the province and the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation broke down. The sides were supposed to sit down today, but their mediator says they are too far apart to even bother. High schools in 10 boards, including York, Halton, and the Kawarthas, will be affected by tomorrow's one-day strike. Talks won't resume now until January. This is the time of year where spending for many people balloons, and one of the biggest price tags can be the grocery bill. A new study out this morning shows that almost all Canadians feel food prices are climbing faster than their incomes, no matter how much they earn. Arthi Pohl has more.
From coast to coast, Canadians are bracing for their food bills to go up significantly. A survey conducted by the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University asked Canadians how they feel about food prices relative to their household income. After interviewing 1,500 people this month, here's what researchers found. A total of 87% of Canadians surveyed believe food prices are increasing faster than their income, and 53% intend to do something about that. While the concern is steady across the board, there are some geographic differences. For example, provincial economies may be a factor in why Albertans and people from Quebec are more worried than those living in BC. And the main food categories where people are most concerned is the price increases in vegetables, meat, and dairy, all expected to rise between 1% to 6% from 2019 prices. Now, this belief that food bills are rising faster than income just isn't in your head. The Canada Food Price Report 2020, also compiled by Dalhousie University and Guelph Universities, forecasted food prices to go up by 4% in the next year. That translates to an extra $487 out of Canadians' pockets in 2020. To keep that number as low as possible, some folks are looking at food budget resolutions for the new year. And here are some examples of what survey respondents said they will do to try to keep more money in their bank account. For example, eating out less, shopping in bulk, and frequenting the frozen food aisle. As to why there's this projected increase, the report highlights climate change as a big culprit for those rising prices.
Climate change always will impact food prices. Climate change is costing Canadians, whenever they buy food, they don't realize it, but it does.
Arthi Pohl, CBC News, Toronto.
We have been hovering around zero, Colette, but it's feeling like we're heading below that now. Wrong direction.
Yeah, we are going to be going in the wrong direction, Dwight. You know, winter doesn't officially arrive until this weekend, but we are going to be getting a preview. So when we look at numbers like these are our current temperatures. Enjoy this. We're not going to be seeing this for a little while, so it's sitting just below the freezing mark, sub-zero there. Toronto at -1. Oshawa, you're hanging on there at freezing at the moment. Now, is there a wind chill? There is, but it only knocks off a few degrees, so it's really not too bad. We had that system that pushed through and gave some snowfall, especially around the Niagara Peninsula through today. Now, another system is moving through. It's going to pass by pretty quickly, but as it goes, it is driving in that core of much colder air. It's also going to be driving these winds very strong from the northwest once they turn around behind this front as we get into Wednesday. So watch what happens as I roll this forward. It's almost like fingers across the lake and then coming on land. Those are those snow squalls where we will see significant accumulations plus significantly reduced visibility as well through the day on Wednesday. So areas that are in white, those are the snow squall warnings, snow squall watches for areas in blue, 5 to 10 centimeters there. There'll be some pockets here into the warning areas of 15 to 25 centimeters. And then we still have some travel advisories elsewhere. So I'm going to dig into this a little deeper in terms of the accumulations coming up. But overnight tonight, -4, -6 by tomorrow morning. Temperature falling through the day, Dwight. It will be -8 by tomorrow afternoon.
Ouch. Thanks, Colette.
Ouch, that's a good word for it. You're welcome.
A drive-by shooting has left a 14-year-old with non-life-threatening injuries. It happened around 10:30 last night in the Jane and Shepherd area. Investigators say a teen called police after hearing gunshots. He later realized he had been hit by one of the bullets. The teen told police the shots were fired from a black car. Toronto families affected by the shooting on the Danforth last year have launched a lawsuit. The class action is seeking $150 million from the gun manufacturer, claiming the U.S. company should be held accountable because smart technology existed that could have prevented the shooting. Lorena Redekop has the details.
This is the handgun fired that night on the Danforth, a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson reported stolen in 2015 by a gun dealer in Saskatchewan. The lawsuit claims the firearm used was negligently designed and manufactured. It says Smith & Wesson knew handguns developed without smart gun technology were deficient, unsafe, inherently and unnecessarily dangerous. Smart gun technology makes a gun unusable by anyone other than the owner.
Had smart technology back in 2000 like they said they were going to do, this shooting never would have occurred. Reese would still be alive. The Cozy's girl would still be alive, and all these other people wouldn't be shot up and injured.
Patrick McLeod, his wife, and their daughter Sky are among the people bringing forward this class action. Sky was injured not by a bullet, but running from the gunfire. She was a close friend of Reese Fallon, one of the two people killed that night. Ken Price's daughter Samantha, another friend, was shot in the hip. He says this is about taking a stand.
I think everybody still believes that what we're doing is the right thing, trying to make a positive change for others.
A similar lawsuit could not be launched in the U.S. In 2005, Congress there passed a law preventing civil suits against the unauthorized use of a firearm. This class action points out there is no such law here in Canada. Smart gun technology makes a gun unusable by anyone other than the owner, activated by wearable technology or an owner's fingerprint. The lawsuit surprised this gun advocate.
I've never heard of anyone that ever owned a smart gun myself. I've never actually seen one myself. So it's certainly not a technology that's in widespread use in Canada. Probably one of the reasons for that is it's really not applicable to Canada because in Canada we have very strict storage regulations.
Along the Danforth, a year and a half later, reminders of that night remain. Here's how people reacted to this latest news.
I hope they win the lawsuit.
How likely do you think that is?
Not very likely.
I think it's a very important thing that they are filing that lawsuit, and hopefully it comes into fruition.
It'll make a statement, that's all. It makes people aware, more aware.
The lawsuit gives Smith & Wesson 40 days to respond. The company did not respond to CBC's request for comment. Lorena Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Pope Francis lifts the secrecy rule for sexual abuse cases in the Roman Catholic Church. It has long protected clergy accused of abusing children. We'll have more from Vatican City after the break.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Toronto police making a new push tonight to solve a decades-old murder. 28-year-old Richard Thomas Moore's body was found near Colburn Lodge Drive in High Park on December 3rd, 1988. Moore had been beaten and stabbed multiple times. His empty wallet was found several hundred yards away from his body. A knife believed to belong to the killer was also found. It was recently sent for analysis to the Center for Forensic Science. Investigators say recent technological advancements may help police develop a DNA profile of the killer. And police have made an arrest in connection with 4 sex assaults in Toronto and Collingwood dating back to 2015. And detectives say it was a critical detail from a victim that led them to the accused.
As we spoke to our victims, our survivors gave us information. Each one gave us points that moved us towards who we were looking at. And in one of the cases, one of the victims was able to collect a license plate.
34-year-old Depeche Patel of Toronto was arrested on November 1st after a 22-year-old woman was sexually assaulted. Police say they made the arrest after the victim was able to note the man's license plate. After further investigation, police allegedly linked Patel to a 2015 attack in Toronto and a 2017 attack in Collingwood. They also allege Patel was behind an attack in July of this year in which a woman was sexually assaulted after getting into what she thought was a rideshare vehicle. Patel is facing numerous sex assault charges and also weapons charges. The Roman Catholic Church is changing some of its rules around sexual abuse cases involving clergy. The changes are expected to make it easier for lawyers or police to get information from the Vatican when they request it. Megan Williams has more now from Rome.
For the first time, the Vatican will be cooperating with other countries who want information about cases of priests accused of sexual abuse of minors or covering up that abuse. Up until now, the Vatican has shrouded in secrecy everything related from the reporting of those crimes to the actual legal cases to final decisions. Now, the Vatican, if it gets a request, say from Canada, for information about a case where it tried a priest for sexual abuse or covering up a sexual abuse, the Vatican will now share that information with Canada, whereas previously it didn't. The other major change is that those involved in the cases at the Vatican, those either who accuse priests of sexual abuse or the accused priests themselves, don't have the right to talk about it. They have an obligation to secrecy. That has been abolished as well.
The reform of reducing the amount of secrecy is a good step. But what we need to do is have the Pope commit to zero tolerance. And as long as a reform helps a victim and protects children from sexual abuse, we welcome these reforms, and it's a step forward.
One of the most vocal advocates for survivors of sexual abuse is the Irish Mari O'Collins, and she tweeted immediately almost that this was excellent news. Very pleased with it. She says this is, an important step towards transparency. The other change the Pope made today was changing the age of the definition of a victim of child pornography from under age 14 to under age 18. So older teenagers will now be covered by that crime. All in all, it's good news for the victims. They're very pleased with this. They see this as a step towards more transparency. And having spoken with some Vatican insiders, a lot of the resistance to this came from within the Vatican. The Pope had to push against people in the Vatican bureaucracy in order to bring this about. Megan Williams, CBC News, Rome.
It's really important to know where, who, and how the garment was made or whatever the product was made.
After the break, how you can be a more conscious consumer this holiday gift-giving season. We'll explain after the break. Many of us try and put a lot of thought into gift giving during the holidays, but what if you want your presents to have a positive impact on people and the environment? There are plenty of businesses, many right here in Toronto, that focus on socially and environmentally sustainable products. Angelina King has more on what you need to know to shop consciously this holiday season.
That land in Egypt and the people on it is being protected and supported here in Toronto.
Through subsidies and guaranteed prices.
Cotton is a Toronto-based brand that creates ethical and sustainable clothing by working with small Egyptian farmers. A part of each sale goes to build schools for children there. The company prides itself on sharing how each piece is made.
It's really important to know where, who, and how the garment was made or whatever the product was made, so that you can form an opinion on whether you want to back that product with your power, consuming power.
But with all the marketing out there, how do you know what's legitimate?
Halali suggests doing some research before going out shopping, and when you are inside of the stores, take a second to look for a certification or even just read a label to know you're making informed decisions.
Look for certification logos like Fair Trade, Organic, and B Corp. Cotton is one of about 3,000 companies worldwide with B Corp certification. Those businesses pass an extremely high social and environmental test that can take around a year to achieve.
You can recycle this with confidence.
Angela Wallace is a consultant who works with conscious companies, including by helping them get certified.
If it was easy, everyone would do it. It also includes pretty rigorous assessments, often on the ground or in the local place where the product is grown, where it's shipped, where it's supplied. So there is a body then, or a group of people that are double checking these claims.
She says while it's a sure way to know which products are legitimate, there are plenty of authentic companies without certifications. That's when a bit of research comes in, or stores that do it for you.
Hello.
Julie Skirving opened her eco-conscious store in Toronto 7 years ago.
All of that was pretty new 7 years ago. People thought it was like a really weird store.
Skirving says there's been a big shift in interest since, but understands knowing where to start can be overwhelming. So she suggests your garbage can.
See what you throw out a lot and figure out what can I do like every day. I think it is more powerful than people realize.
It's one of the best ways we can make a tangible difference on some of the world's most pressing problems.
Choices that can be made any time of the year. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
Provincial and territorial finance ministers agreed to a pair of key money issues in talking with the federal minister today. They want more money for healthcare transfers, and they want more financial assistance when dealing with energy sector downturns or other challenges. Ottawa didn't write any checks, but did agree to assess the proposals.
We're going to take away what we've heard today and do the analysis. We have multiple demands on the federal government, as every one of the finance ministers behind me have as well. And we'll have to take a close look at how we respond.
The provinces want to remove limits on the total amount of assistance funding available for those struggling. Some also hope Ottawa will make such payment retroactive to compensate for those years when oil producers began to struggle. Minister Morneau says his analysis won't be ready until next month. There seems to have been a little less unanimity or interest among the provinces and territories about working on a universal farmer care plan, but Morneau says it is still on Ottawa's agenda. In Washington, D.C., U.S. Democratic leaders say the House will vote tomorrow on 2 articles of impeachment against President Donald Trump, abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. And today, though, the Democrats and Republicans are still negotiating the rules for that vote. Megan Fitzpatrick now with the latest.
Capitol Hill stepped closer to impeaching President Donald Trump today, and as it did, the president lashed out at Democrats in his own defense. The drama unfolded hours ahead of what is expected to be a historic day in Washington tomorrow. The House of Representatives Rules Committee met today to set the procedures for tomorrow's debate in the full House of Representatives. Democrats and Republicans who spoke at the committee once again made their cases for and against impeaching the president. Democrats argued that Trump abused his power and obstructed Congress from investigating his conduct, and that they can't let him get away with it.
The president's continuing course of conduct constitutes a clear and present danger to democracy in America.
Republicans, in turn, argued that Trump did nothing improper, but that Democrats are determined to kick him out of office anyway.
It is, as you referenced, Mr. Chairman, a sad day. Sad day for me personally, for the Rules Committee, for the institution of the House, and for the American people.
As the partisan bickering dragged on today on Capitol Hill, Trump was at the White House declaring the push for impeachment a disgrace. In the Oval Office meeting with the president of Guatemala, Trump told reporters that he takes no responsibility for the impeachment inquiry.
It's a hoax, it's a witch hunt, and it's just a continuation. It's been going on now for almost 3 years. And it probably started before I even won the election, based on what we're finding out with the insurance policy quotes and other things. So it's a disgrace.
Trump also released a scathing letter he sent to Speaker Nancy Pelosi. In it, he says her party is on a crusade to impeach him and that it amounts to declaring war on American democracy. The 6-page letter accuses Democrats of the very things the president is accused of, trying to interfere in the next election and obstruction. The stunning letter is an indication of just how tense things are in the U.S. Capitol today ahead of a historic vote sometime in the next 24 hours. Megan Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Washington.
For months now, climate activists have been holding weekly protests outside the U.S. Capitol building. They're known as Fire Drill Fridays, and one familiar face in those demonstrations is actor Jane Fonda. Now in her 80s, she's well known for her activism. Susan Ormiston sat down with her for a look back at the decades she spent protesting.
Oh, look at this. This is Jane Fonda's mugshot from 1970.
You were arrested crossing the Canadian-U.S. border.
That's right.
Back
That was
in
my first arrest.
1970?
Yes, that was my first.
And what was that for?
The police told me this. We are on orders from the White House to arrest me, seize all my records and my phone books and everything, and accused me of smuggling drugs, which were actually vitamin pills. But they were pretty rough. The cops were rough, and it was orders from the White House.
They wanted to stop your Vietnam protests.
Yeah.
What did you learn from that experience? Because you were criticized as Hanoi Jane for some of that, and you apologized later in life. So you must have learned something from that you took forward.
Don't let the bastards get you down. Just keep going. You know, the more they attacked me, the more I dug in my heels. If they thought I was some, you know, some soft Hollywood starlet daughter of Henry Fonda and they could bully me, no, I wasn't going to let them get me. I just kept going.
You still feel that way?
Yeah. Only see, now I'm old, and so I feel even more capable of standing up.
You tell them, Jane. That's actor Jane Fonda speaking with Susan Ormiston. The full interview airs tonight on the National at 9 p.m. on CBC News Network, 10 p.m. here on CBC Television, or you can stream it on the CBC News app or CBC Gem.
I am surprised that they're allowing that to happen. I think that's where the jury's out as to how dangerous that can be.
They're now legal and about to be sold in Ontario, but there's still plenty of concerns around cannabis vaping, and it's not just because of lung damage. After the break, why the effects of it haven't been even tested by Health Canada. What's up, Colette? Worrying winds. What's the weather headline? I see it above you there.
Yeah, it's going to be the winds. You're right, Dwight. And those winds are responsible for so many things. So they're going to drive the snow squalls. And I was showing you earlier in the show some of the watches and snow squall warnings that are in place around Georgian Bay and in the lee of Lake Huron. Those will be ramping up, also ushering in this Arctic air, and that's going to hang in for a few days. We'll have a wind chill, but when those winds get really gusty, it's going to feel even colder. So these temperatures, these are nothing. This is child's play in terms of -1. We're at in Toronto -2 for Hamilton and St. Catharines at -1, so just below 0. The wind chills, yeah, okay, that plays a little bit of a part, but we're still in that -5 to -8 for Mount Forest. It's going to be a situation where the winds get stronger by tomorrow afternoon, and we'll actually find our temperatures plummeting through the day tomorrow. So the system that was having the impact earlier today, especially around the Niagara Peninsula and still over towards the Ottawa Valley, although it's exiting, that one making it haste and moving on. The next one's going to make haste as well, but as it comes in, it's more the fact that it's going to crank up these lake effects. So as we go into the day on Wednesday and those winds get set and turn towards first the west, then the northwest, that's when we start to see these streamers pushing across. And some of those meaning that we'll get some flurries or at times some little bursts, can have some bursts of snow coming into the GTA. You may be driving along in your sunny skies and then all of a sudden whiteout conditions. So you know that kind of drill when you get into these squalls. So over here towards Oshawa, Pickering, there's a chance you could see that into the afternoon hours, and yet you drive towards the city or downtown and you get into more sunshine. The heavier amounts of snow, again, 15 to 25 centimeters into some of the higher elevations, Dundalk Highlands, through those regions. But there's even a chance towards the London area. We've got some watches in place there where you may be seeing 5 to 10 centimeters. So watch these projections, say about 6 centimeters there in the London area. I know it doesn't look that bad into the Mount Forest region, but as I say, there'll be pockets where it's going to be over 20 centimeters there. So here you go with your overnight temperatures. -4 degrees, those certainly aren't that bad, right? Wind chill of -10, we'll take that into account. By tomorrow afternoon, because the temperatures keep slipping, -8, -9 into Markham, and those winds, look how strong those winds will be getting. So that wind chill is a factor when you take in the sustained winds. The gusts are a whole nother story in terms of how it feels on the skin. How long does it last? Well, Wednesday night into Thursday will be the coldest, -13. Thursday, -6. Thursday night into Friday, still cold, and Friday crisp. But it does improve. Our penguin there denoting that late Saturday, Dwight, winter officially begins, and it begins with a warm-up.
We'll take it.
Flip-flop, I know, yeah. Okay, maybe it's going to be nice to us.
Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Cannabis edibles and vaping products can now be legally sold in most provinces. Vaping is especially controversial, not just because of the outbreak of lung injuries associated with e-cigarettes, but because Health Canada has not yet tested the effects. As Christine Birak explains, at least one cannabis company has preemptively pulled its vaping products over health and safety concerns.
Up close, cannabis vape oil looks a lot like honey, but it's actually a potent mix of THC, the chemical that gets people high, diluted with additives and topped with flavorings to give it that taste and smell. Newly regulated cannabis oils are required to list all chemical ingredients inside and their amounts, but health experts say one major safety check is missing.
We don't really understand that this is a different mode of delivery.
When cannabis vape oils are heated or vaporized, they produce new chemicals. So what goes in isn't necessarily what comes out. Health Canada admits there has been no analysis done on those chemicals.
That means that they'll be going into people's lungs before they're tested in a vaping machine.
We asked leading cannabis companies if they're testing emissions from their products. The answer was basically no. It's not something Health Canada required them to do.
We work in partnership with Health Canada to meet or exceed all the safety regulations that they put out.
Most companies are shipping new cannabis vape products out across the country, but at least one is holding back. Hexo acknowledges common chemicals found in cannabis vape oils are under scrutiny for having potential negative health impacts. It's testing different formulations in search of a safer product. American doctors treating patients with vaping-related illnesses, many linked to the additive vitamin E acetate, say, given all the unknowns, they can't understand why Canada has legalized THC vape products now.
I am surprised that they're allowing that to happen. I think that's where the jury's out as to how dangerous that can be.
That's why some provinces have said, hang on a minute, let's wait at least until the US CDC can finish their investigation so that we can have a better list of what should and shouldn't go in these oils.
His advice? Until the science is settled, Canadians should consider sticking with dry leafy cannabis. Christine Burak, CBC News, Waterloo, Ontario.
Who would you trust more, a teacher or, say, Alexa or a Google device? What about your children? Who would they trust more? A new survey has some surprising findings. Details after the break. Who do you think is more skeptical of technology, adults or children? The answer might surprise you. Our tech columnist, Ramona Pringle, joins us now with more on this. So, Ramona, what are the results of this study and what do you make of it?
I think it's so interesting and I think it's surprising. What they found is that comparing the internet or like a source like Alexa to their teachers, kids overwhelmingly trust what their teachers have to say, even in cases where their teachers might happen to be wrong. This was all founded in scientific fact or historical fact, but questions like, how many days does it take for Mars to revolve around the sun, or how many bones are in the human hand? And then they would give them the contrasting answers of what the internet says versus what their teacher would say, and those kids did trust their teachers. And this is so fascinating to me right now, especially because we're dealing with this spread of misinformation, disinformation, where it feels like sometimes we trust what we see online more than we ought to. But what the study shows us is that we don't start out that way.
What do you think it is that kids trust their teachers over, say, Alexa?
Well, they've got a relationship with their teachers. And I think by default, when you develop a relationship, you also develop trust. So I think that that's part of it. Another part of it, I spoke with one of the researchers about this, and she has a toddler, and she says that when her son was 4 years old, he, would call Alexa this tiny little woman who lived in the kitchen somewhere. It's something like a virtual assistant or a voice assistant, and by extension, the internet is so amorphous that it's hard for a little kid to grasp. You put yourself in their shoes, and what is this thing, or who is this thing? By extension, trusting another human is something that's ingrained in us.
Is there a turning point then, you think, for us as adults where we kind of lose that and it does go the other way?
Their rationale that they came up with was one that there's so much information online versus as humans, we're limited in our capacity of what our knowledge is.
Yes.
We also, our memories fail us, whereas, for better or for worse, the internet does not forget. And then lastly, they said humans become, or as adults, we become less trusting of each other as we get older. The researchers said up until around 8, kids are quite skeptical of what they see online, and then our relationship, as we start learning more about computers, it becomes more complicated, right? On one hand, we know that they make silly mistakes, Siri makes silly mistakes all the time, or that they're perfectly accurate, but that's not the case.
So is there something the study's telling us that we can learn from our kids?
Well, if you've ever seen a little kid in a room with a virtual, like a voice assistant, what you've seen is that they will pepper them with questions. Are unicorns real?
Yeah, I remember
what
that.
color is my hair? What color is my shirt? And they're trying to test them, to see, can I believe you? Can I trust you? Does this make sense in the world? And so in some ways, again, looking at the spread of disinformation, it wouldn't hurt for us to question a little bit more who and what we get our information from, to be a little bit more skeptical.
As parents, we worry about the relationship between our kids and social media, the internet, and technology. So does this study tell us that we shouldn't be as worried as we are?
There's so many big headlines about everything to be worried about. There's been a lot of research over the last 10 years that shows, in fact, kids have really good instincts when it comes to protecting their own privacy. In this case, about being cautious about sources, questioning sources. So I think that there's a case for cautious optimism, and it does show us, even in terms of how we teach them to interact with these tools, how we engage with them, that we shouldn't be limiting them or shielding them from the technology, but instead guiding them and guiding the way that they engage.
Being parents.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ramona.
Nice to speak with you always.
Is a Wednesday snowstorm in your forecast? Well, let's back with the details after the break.
Toronto, or Toronto if you're from here, is not only the most diverse city in the world, but also a city brimming with culture and entertainment. Our Toronto is all about bringing you distinct characters and characteristics that makes this one of the best places in the world to live.
Because our Toronto is your Toronto.
Okay, so it may not be Christmas just yet, but it sure sounded like it at Runnymede Healthcare Center. Patients at the center were entertained with a special concert from some familiar faces, and we got the chance to go along too.
Today we are hosting the Swansea Public School kids who have come by to perform a wonderful Christmas concert for the patients. Since about 2015, when we partnered up with TDSB to run the intergenerational program, they've been coming every December to do a holiday concert. It exposes them to the older generation in the community, gives them an opportunity to, share what they're learning in school, and also exposes them to maybe a different type of person that we would see in the community, dealing with different challenges or disabilities. What they get out of the children coming is just pure joy. You'll notice a lot of the patients really light up when the kids come around, and become a little more social too when they start engaging with the kids.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way.
And it actually triggers a reminiscing. So they start talking about when their kids were younger, when they were raising their families at home, and it's really just been a very emotionally fulfilling and socially fulfilling experience for the older patients.
We come to the healthcare center once a month and participate in an intergenerational program with the patients. And we brought a few of our other classes from Swansea today and decided to have not only showcase what the kids can do, but to have a sing-along with the patients. It's awesome. The patients love us, we love them, and we get treated like gold when we're here. So it's a very reciprocal relationship, I think. The students gain and the patients gain as well.
Oh, it's wonderful. The kids sing beautifully, they're well behaved. And the little bigger ones sing like angels too. It's nice. They make wonderful Christmas cards, and they made them all for the patients here, which is very nice.
We made a stocking with felt and buttons and glue.
Oh, I love the kids. Yeah, they're great.
They just feel that we care about them, and that people remember about them during the holiday season.
I feel like they feel really happy about us coming and singing for them. It lightens their day a lot.
Especially because they might not see a lot of people. It's really awesome that we got the chance to come here.
Oh, what fun it is to ride the one-horse open sleigh. Oh, yeah. Hey.
Jingle bells.
Oh, it's really awesome, those young people.
I love the
I love that
handmade
program.
cards.
Oh, that's great, getting them all together like that. What's not going to be so great, that drive tomorrow.
No, it's not going to be. If you're sort of getting out of town maybe a little bit early, getting a jump on holiday season, things like that, or you just need to be traveling the 400 and such, we are looking at snow squalls setting up. There'll be lots of areas with whiteout conditions because of some of those squalls. Even when snow's not coming down, because the winds are going to be so strong tomorrow, it will blow what snow there is around as well. So just mostly flurries into the city, Dwight, but we are talking about significant accumulation. So there are snow squall warnings around Barrie, over towards Dundalk. You're looking towards Huron, Perth, and getting into some of the situations where we do get into higher elevations where it's 20 to 25 centimeters.
That much?
Yeah. Back towards London, it's more that 5 to 10 centimeter exchange, and we might pick up a centimeter or two, depends how they shift through the day. But the temperature will be falling into the afternoon. So it's a reversal of what we normally see, and you have to be prepared for that. How you dress in the morning isn't how you dress for later in the day.
Good advice, partner. Thank you.
You got it.
That's it for us tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.